Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three shenanigan-ridden harpies, as Danny likes to call us, talk to you about everything in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we're feeling. I'm Liz.
I'm Danny.
And I'm Wiggles.
And welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk to you about Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. But before we do that, I just gotta warn the people. Gotta let you know that we're crass, unhinged, and as the beginning said, full of shenanigans, which means that we're going to swear, we're going to talk about all of the sexy, naughty times. And if you're not into that, I get it. But here is your opportunity to exit stage right.
I would have gone stage left if I were you, but you know.
I pointed stage left, but I said stage right.
I know,
so
that's why I was like, are you confuzzled?
Always.
Yes, the people who are listening will for sure know what you're talking about. We're going to talk about Rebecca Ross because I'm getting us back on track.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay. Rebecca Ross is a #1 New York Times bestseller and is known for fantasy books for teens and adults, has written multiple highly acclaimed duologies. So that's her ball game, is the duology. They include Letters of Enchantment, Elements of Cadence, and The Queen's Rising, and several other novels, but I'm not going to list them all. She is also avid gardener, really likes wildflowers, and is from Georgia. That's the short story, as her website states. And then it goes on to say that basically, like, she treated books like traveling through a portal to Narnia and has loved books ever since, and was writing literally on her lunch breaks and on weekends and in evenings and pre-dawn hours to get her first book, The Queen's Rising, done. So she really had to work the hard life to get to where she is. And so, yeah, there you have it. Rebecca Ross, kicking ass and taking names.
So maybe I should give us a little overview of what Divine Rivals is about.
Oh, I'd love that, Danny.
Perfect. So it's about two columnists. Well, competing people who are trying to become columnists.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a war in their country is kind of what I get the impression of. It doesn't for sure say. It's far away from the town that they live, which is called Oath. And her brother is gone in the war and everything. And so she's competing to be the columnist against a guy who's kind of being a douche to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been writing letters to her brother on her typewriter every night and slipping them through the door of her wardrobe just to make herself feel better because she hasn't gotten anything back from him. It's been 6 months. And then she discovered that they're actually disappearing. And then she starts getting replies, but not from her brother.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And then she ends up having a really good conversation with this person that she doesn't really know. It turns out it is her rival, spoiler. And then her mother dies and she runs away to be a war correspondent.
Like you do.
Like you do. She did not get the columnist job. He beat her for that because she didn't tell anyone that her mother died. And the boss is kind of an asshole. And even when he found out, he didn't let her have a chance still. And then all of a sudden she's been gone for not too long, a couple weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, she's been gone for a couple weeks doing the war corresponding. More than that, because she actually did have a couple of columns that were published that he saw.
Yeah, maybe it's more like a couple months.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some span of time between 8 and 2 weeks.
Yeah. And all of a sudden he shows up because he's in love with her.
Heart eyes.
Heart eyes. Which I don't have a problem with because he's actually known her for quite a while. So let's talk about it.
Let's do.
There's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about.
Here, if there are no objections from the party, I would like to talk about the magic in this universe first.
I do have many notes.
Yes,
I have
let's talk about
thoughts,
the
I
magic.
have questions, and I'm hoping some more of them get answered. First, starting with the gods, I've kind of been looking for a book like this in some ways, not necessarily with this core story to it, but the idea of, we have these mythologies all over in every corner of the globe. What is it if these gods, if you will, are coming back, showing up? What does that impact in a modern world? Now, granted, it's not quite modern. It feels
Feels like World War One-ish.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it feels very like 20s, 30s.
Yeah. So there's that. But still, 19th century. Wait, yes?
Yeah.
Yes?
No.
No.
20th
century. I was like, I know that's not right.
Early 20th century.
20th century is still, in my opinion, modern when you're talking about ancient Greece, right? Or Mesopotamia, right? So in that context, I thought that was really interesting. The premise that the people are just stuck with these gods that are waging this war that they really don't want anything to fucking do with.
The gods were also giving me very much Hades and Persephone vibes.
You got that too, huh?
Mhm.
Except for that Hades isn't that much of a dick and Persephone actually wants to be with him.
Yeah, it's actually probably closer to Zeus and any of the many gods that he pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Hades really isn't an asshole. He's not.
For the
In
most
most
part,
of the
yeah.
stories, he's really not. He's not a dick.
Mm-hmm.
And Persephone actually really likes being with him.
Persephone's more terrifying than Hades is.
Oh, fuck yeah, she is.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really interesting that I'm very glad she decided to create her own gods, even if they are in the vein of similar mythologies. I wouldn't have wanted to read this story, or I wouldn't have been encouraged to read this story, I should say, if it was another one that was focused around Zeus or Hades or Persephone or Hera, or you know what I mean?
Well, and the gods weren't the point of the story.
No.
And I
No.
think if they were real gods from our mythology, that it would have just overshadowed the story too much.
Agreed.
Right, because you would be trying to think of one, which myth,
Yeah.
two, where are the other gods, right? So I like the approach she took to that.
Yeah.
I do still have questions of, are these the only two that are left? Are these the only two that they know about?
That is the impression that I got. She said that the humans destroyed the gods.
But then she also said later on, Iris, when she was like actually digging up more mythology, she was like, wait a minute, is that just a story we've been telling ourselves?
Yeah.
And what is the goddess's name? Enya or
Ember.
No,
Em?
you're thinking of a different mythology. It's not Ember. It's Dacre. Dacre and
It's like Enya or something like that.
Enva.
Enva.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the mythologies that she was reading kind of led her to the concept that Enva was the one that put some of the gods to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Dacre, he does not seem to regard any life outside of his own as having value. But we get very little from him and very little information about him. And so I have a feeling that in this upcoming sequel, we're going to find out more, if for nothing else. Here's the big spoiler warning, if we haven't spoiled it enough already for you. In the epilogue, we do get Dacre's point of view. And so I think that we're going to get a lot more information about both Enva and Dacre.
Well, yes, because the male protagonist is now with him.
Well,
yeah,
at least
big twist at the
hostage.
Yes.
With, we don't know yet, but any who's face. So I do think that that's interesting. What I don't fully understand the connection to is, how does the magic relate to the gods, or is it entirely independent? Or are there other gods that we don't know the myth of that are assisting silently the human race?
I think the magic is independent of the gods. I think the gods have their own magic, but then I think, and it may have been that it is mostly out of the world, and that's why you really don't see it much. But the typewriters themselves, they were told that the rich father of one of the people who had the original typewriters had like hired somebody that poured magic into these 3 typewriters because his daughter had like tuberculosis or something like that.
It was some sort of disease where she had to stay locked away.
She had to stay locked away. She was dying essentially, and for years. Like, it was painful. And so he had these 3 typewriters made for her and for her 2 best friends. And that's how the portals happened. Her typewriter, her original typewriter, is in a museum. But then the 2 main characters, their grandmothers were the best friends. And that's how they ended up with the typewriters.
To answer Wiggles, your question, I think there's 2 kind of key things that answer your question as best as we can, because like you said, Danny, the magic is very clearly like leaving the world or is like not there much. But they talk about, or Iris talks about, the gods being buried under the burrows, and that their magic seems, they believe, to be leaking out. But there's another key line, just one little thing that Roman says at one point when he's explaining a myth, I believe, and he talks about ley lines.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, in this world, that could be a very different thing than it's anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, ley lines are just magic that exists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So both? Maybe both?
Yeah.
It very well could be both.
I just want to know more about it, to the point that I don't want this to be a duology. I want to explore this world more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy the kind of magic meets, not steampunk, but like that kind of vibe of 1920s era.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the world was super interesting. I also really like how it was delivered to us.
Mm-hmm.
There really wasn't much for info dumps. It was kind of just really common things that as a person we could grasp onto. If you explain something in the lens of the 1920s, 1930s, I can very easily grasp it.
Absolutely.
And then just the gods were explained in a way that just kind of felt like nobody knew the answers. So I was like, okay, if nobody knows, I'm not going to know either. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And she really did an info dump, which I kind of liked.
Yeah.
The only info dump you kind of get is a little bit of the myths, and they're given to you in parts because she's gotten them in letters. And I don't feel like that's info dumpy. That's an important and appropriate moment where she learns things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The character is learning.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
It also makes a lot of sense when you think about this is a modern world and society that's completely detached from it. If all you have is whatever has survived the test of time from when all of this happened,
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense. If the gods went to sleep for 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
what would you still remember? What would society still remember? And it's going to be things like old wives' tales,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Well, and the other reason that Roman knows these things is because he found the first part of the story in a book that his grandfather had, because he's old money.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he's very specifically not old money.
Oh, yeah, no, he's new money. But they have a lot of old books and everything, and his grandpa liked to squirrel that shit away. And so he found the first half of this story, of this myth, and gave it to her and, you know, wrote it out for her and everything. And then she was like, if you know the second half, I would really like it. And he's like, I can't find it. So he pestered his nan, who is delightful and kind of bitchy at the same time.
What I aspire
as a
to be.
man is.
I
Yeah.
really liked his nan.
Mm-hmm.
I also really liked her moments where he's like, I don't like her like that. And she doesn't know her at all. And doesn't seem like she's super close with her grandson. But that woman called him out with her eyeballs.
It was definitely giving, you don't find a girl like that every dynasty.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
It's interesting, the characters that developed and the characters that were left behind in this series.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them, you think, oh, they're going to just be here for a minute, and then nope, that one's staying. But then other ones that you're like, this feels like a permanent fixture. Absolutely not.
Like Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
the assistant or something of the guy who's running the paper, the Gazette. I was like, okay, cool. She's going to be the best friend character that just kind of exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, nah, she's not.
No.
That's going to be this person over here. It's going to be Addie.
Yeah.
Yep. But I appreciated Sarah.
You know, she was as good a friend as she could possibly be under the circumstances, I think.
Iris wasn't like up for making friends at that point. She had a lot going on though.
Right.
Well, and her last name, every single time I read it, which is, I think, Prindle or Pindle.
Prindle.
When you read it, it looks a lot like Pringles. So I was like, Sarah Pringles knows all the snacks, which is true because she brought the tea.
She did bring
like
the tea.
actual tea.
Mm-hmm.
And also the tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that Iris's big revenge against Roman all the time was to fuck with his desk because he's a little OCD, and she just kept like turning his books around so that they were the way that he didn't like them.
I mean, if somebody came in here and fucked with all my books on the wrong day, I would be very unhappy with it.
Oh, I would too. If
Oh, yeah,
somebody was
same.
just like, I'm going to move all your books around, I'd be like, okay, so you have a death wish.
So
I
it's
understand.
war. Understood.
It's just such a passive aggressive thing. I can just like, my mind's eye saw her just like walking by his desk, not even really thinking about it, just walking by his desk and then just like swirling the book around on top and continuing on.
The cutest part about this whole thing is skipping ahead after Iris has left and gone to be a war correspondent, and Roman has kind of finally admitted to himself that he loves her, or at the very least really likes her. And he starts actually fucking with his own shit because he's like, oh, this is what Iris used to do. And like turn his pencil case or do whatever. I was like, that's cute.
He missed the fucking with
Yeah.
That, I think, is how I would characterize the entire relationship between Roman and Iris. Is so fucking cute.
So cute.
They're so cute. They're quippy little shit, and oh, I love it.
I mean, it is what every teenage girl, when you think about the relationship that you're going to have in your head, it's pretty close to what came to mind. I guarantee you. Do we want to talk about Roman and Iris?
I think we have to.
Yeah. I from the beginning, I thought their quote unquote rivalry was really cute, but I don't know how much I cared about the potential marriage off to Miss Little.
I didn't care about it mostly because Roman's not going to go through with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it is in my opinion, a good catalyst for his character arc,
Mhm.
because
Absolutely.
just having Iris leave could have been devastating for him, but I don't think it would have been enough for him to also then leave to be a war correspondent.
Mhm.
I think he needed to essentially run away from home.
Yeah.
Yes, which he does.
Yeah.
Yep. Which he says in the letter that his nan's real mad at him at the moment. He hadn't told her why yet or anything. Well, clearly it's because he left, and it's like, I don't think you know her very well. I'm pretty sure she's like, fuck yeah, go get her.
She probably isn't too happy with her only grandson going off to war.
Well, he's just supposed to be a correspondent.
So I like historical fiction and some like historical war around like World War I, World War II.
Mhm.
And so the specifically when they got to the trenches, because everything up until that point was increasing in tension,
Mhm.
but it hadn't gotten bad for those characters. And then when they go to the trenches, I was like, this is, to me, I thought one of the best written parts of the book.
Mhm.
It was very well written, the trenches part, especially like the rules of, they're not allowed to speak at certain times, absolutely no lights. And that is the reality of those things. I imagine. I am not a soldier. I have never been to war, but I would imagine that, there are very strict rules onto certain things like that to try to, protect themselves in that moment. And it was very well written.
Mhm.
I also love he was trying to distract her from the letter he had written her right before they left to go up to the trenches. And so his response was to throw a piece of paper at her face.
Don't look at it.
It's literally what he did. She's reading his letter and he just like crumples up a piece of paper and chucks it at her face. And it's like, what you reading?
The thing I thought was funny about it is that there were a lot of hints that if she just could get past her block that she doesn't like Roman, then she would be like, putting two and two together.
It's her block that she doesn't like him and that he doesn't like her. Because she's convinced that he doesn't like her. But when even before they left, there was very obvious signs from him that he liked her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the thing is she also, in her mind, was starting to realize that she liked him because I think she said at one point or thought that, she was missing him or, wondering what he was doing. But I think her biggest block was the fact that she was convinced that he hated her.
Well, and she was also having guilt-ridden moments a little bit because he at one point told her his name was Carver, which is his middle name. And so she was having that like thought process of, oh, I kind of like Roman, but what about Carver? I really like Carver, because they've been having this conversation through the portal in their typewriters, which I like, but also confuses me every time I say it out loud. But so she's having those moments where she's like, well, but I'm already kind of have a thing with him, but like I like Roman. So she was confused as well, which she's young and I get that.
One of the things I liked best about this book especially given that it was a YA book. They did a very good job of making sure that the teenagers felt like teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are they being forced to grow up quickly? Yeah, they are. Are they still teenagers? Yeah, they are. And it shows in some of the choices that they make, the behaviors that they have, the things they're concerned about in this massive world where there are much bigger things to be concerned about.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it felt natural, and it didn't feel like that stunted talking down to teenagers thing.
Well, I think to add on to that too, the confusion about being at war was also, I could never tell sometimes of like, is Iris making this decision because she's 18, or is she making this decision because this is just an extremely confusing time and world to be in?
Well, confusing time in the world to be in, but also because where she doesn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Because
know?
her brother's been gone for 6 months. She hasn't heard anything from him. Her mother died horrifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get a proper understanding of what actually happened to her. I don't know if she got mugged or something.
She got hit by a car.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we don't really know, like, was she drunk? Probably. That's the
Yeah.
implication, but we don't know that she was.
Yeah, because she had been getting better-ish.
Apparently.
Not really.
Yeah. I don't know. It's that timeline is very muddy. That is one thing I would say. Like the timeline from when we first are introduced to her to when she finally decides to leave and go to the war front, it's not really clear exactly how all that played out.
Yeah, there was definitely some moments, especially in the beginning when she is sending the letters, where I'm like, okay, is this the next day and she sent one letter, or is this like a month later and we've sent a month's worth of letters?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know which one.
Or is there large gaps in between your letters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not clear. But that said, I think that showing their parents with their flaws is a really typical trope in YA books because that's how teenagers see their parents,
Agreed.
you know?
Although I will say, I think the writing of her mother is very good, because when somebody is an alcoholic, because clearly she is,
Mhm.
there are moments where like they think they're better and they
Yeah.
perk up and you think that
Mhm.
things are getting better, and then it's not.
Mhm.
And that was kind of my perception of what had just happened, is she all of a sudden was up and ready to go, and I'm raring to go, and everything's going to be better now, honey, you know. And then she dies like
Mhm.
2 days later. And I thought that was actually a pretty realistic representation of what it is like to live with an alcoholic.
Mhm.
And also the representation of grief for her,
Yeah.
I thought was written very well.
She does a very good job of showing that it does not all hit you at once.
Mm-mm.
And it also does.
Where everything is too much to handle, but also you can't not be doing something.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought those representations of that was really well done. I was like, ooh, that's perfect, because you go, 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 and then everything just shuts off.
Well, and then we've almost none that's memorable anyway, representation of Roman's mother, but we do have a representation of his father, and he's definitely portrayed as the megalomaniac about to go off. It, like he definitely has the vibe of, I'm doing this for the good of the people, but it's like, bro.
Oh,
Who asked you?
to me, I was like,
Fuckface.
that's Lucius Malfoy.
Mm.
Yeah, very Lucius Malfoy.
Yeah.
I was getting instead what's the Green Goblin's real name?
Osborne?
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah. It is Osborne. I remember his
I
first
just don't
name.
remember his first name.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the vibe I was getting.
You know, while we're talking about the beginning and the middle and the end, because we're just good at going all over the place,
As we do.
one of the things that I really liked was the tone of the book, because it started out kind of depressing, but also Iris was like still full of fire.
Mhm.
I got this. Yeah.
And then it gets really depressing. And then she goes to war, and it's kind of actually bright and sunshiny for a little bit because she's in this cute little village and she's like making a new friend. And then it gets really dark when she actually goes to the front. And then it just kind of like comes out of it because Roman's there and they fall in love and everything's happy, and then it's really dark. And I just thought the tone shifts were so well done because it never felt jarring. Like everything felt appropriate.
Agreed. Because you're always going to find a little light in that darkness. And so there is moments like that. They got married when they were getting ready to evacuate. That's fucking cute.
It was.
I generally am not a fan of teenagers getting married in books.
Well, no,
but this actually, it made sense and it worked.
Yeah. I mean, I think under different circumstances, them getting married this young would be wildly inappropriate, but it's definitely a live while you can moment.
Well, and historically, people have done that a lot when it comes to war. They just like, okay, let's get hitched because Lord knows what's happening next.
And they were right.
Yeah. Well, they confessed their love to each other, and I was like all giddy about it when they like actually confessed their love for the first time.
I did too. I was like, woo!
And then I looked at the bottom of my Kindle and it was like, you have approximately an hour and 20 minutes left in this book. And I was like, what the fuck is going to happen?
I know. That is definitely one of those things when you're like, oh my God, they love each other. Yay, they're finally getting together. And you have so much left of it. And you're like, oh no. Oh no.
Well, it's like that TikTok sound. I fucking love it. Where the girl's like, what is this? We're happy and in love, right? So what is this?
Yes.
What is this?
There's like a third of the book left. You're like, what is this?
What is this?
What happens?
Explain yourself. Oh my God.
So I just want to circle back to his father for just a second.
Yeah.
I am disgusted by the fact that he's constantly bringing up the fact that his little sister died on his watch.
It's pretty rough. Yeah. I won't lie to you. The first thought that I had when he was describing it was, okay, there's a God that puts people to sleep.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if that's the dark turn waiting for us in the sequel, but that's where my brain went.
I just thought he was tired and it was sunny.
I don't know.
Yeah, like his dad constantly is just like, well, you did this to your mother or whatever. And it's like, okay, fuck you. He's a teenage boy who fell asleep.
But also, how old was his little sister?
7.
You should not be taking a baby that young out without confirming that you got the okay from the adults.
Okay, but we did that shit in our lives.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And those were bad choices. And
for sure.
None of us are dead.
We're not condoning that.
I'm just saying.
None of us should be alive. The amount of times my brother took me to the pool.
Right.
My brother is 3 years older than I am.
Yeah, I'm approximately a similar age to my brother. And yeah, I was responsible for making sure he got walked home. How well do you think that played out?
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that it was his fault or anything like that. He was a kid.
Yeah.
But the thing is, also parents, you're just blind to your child running around with your other child.
Well, especially because they clearly had been gone for a time. And I can't remember if they had given their parents a lie or something about what they were doing, but they had to have been gone for a few hours.
Yeah, and it was her birthday. They were getting ready for her big birthday bash, whatever, celebrate our precious little princess. Because, they ignore their child every other day of the year, but they're going to throw a big ado on her birthday. And she just wanted to go swimming. So Big Brother to the rescue or whatever. And
well, so not to get all psychological up in this bitch, but when you parentify one sibling, then they think they also have the authority of a parent, and it feels very much like that's what happened here.
Yeah. He's like, I should have said no. And it's like, it's not your fault, bud.
You were a kid playing at parent in that moment.
Yeah.
And if you made the wrong choice, that's why.
Because you're a child.
Because you were a fucking child. No, that was rough. I also sort of got involuntary flashes of the movie Hereditary, if you've never seen that.
No.
I don't know. I don't know if my theory is bullshit, but I just have this feeling that we're going to find out that Emva is not the innocent she's played up to be in the myth that we're told.
Oh,
Yeah.
I definitely feel there's a twist or something coming.
Yeah, there's
with
something that I'm like, I don't trust either of them, quite frankly.
No, absolutely not.
But talking about Roman's sister's death, one of the things that I really liked about that backstory is it fed multiple parts in the story we read. So it fed the connection that he had with Iris when her first letters were talking about how she is missing Forrest, her older brother.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't heard from him in a long time. And so Roman connects to that as somebody who has lost a sibling. But it also kind of defines some of the choices he makes, especially towards the end with Iris, where he is always saying, like, don't go away from me, always find me, keep holding my hand. Like, he never wants to be like out of her sight.
Also helping her understand, because she feels incredibly guilty about her mother's death because her mom wasn't home and she didn't go look for her because her mom is a drunk and she had figured she was out at a bar, whatever, dancing, and she'd be home later, and then she didn't come home. And so Iris also feels really guilty, saying that she should have gone and looked for her and everything. So there's also that where he's like, he can share the grief with her on that, and then also help her understand that that's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I also appreciate that it wasn't just a backstory to make him a sad boy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is frequently something that happens in the romance genre, especially.
Not as much in YA, honestly.
YA is a very saturated market. And so I think in order for you to get to the point that people are buzzing about it, there has to be a certain level of quality. Versus in romance, the girlies just love to be chatting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they'll be talking up books that someone farted out and you're like, this?
Yeah, Book Talk is a strange place because it will suggest things like this book that we're reading, which I really loved. And then it'll suggest other books where I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
Right. I've had both books that are so badly written that I want to scream. And I've also had books that I'm like, I would never have been exposed to this without you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had those experiences both come from the same book talker before. So I'm like, I can't trust anyone.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely moments where I'm like, but why though? Yeah.
I don't trust anybody. No one. I don't trust you. Just kidding.
All right, then.
Well, but you can't, because we all have very different tastes.
Sure.
True, but we also know each other's taste.
That's true.
Like,
And you get to know what a person's likes are. So if somebody says that this is the best book they've ever read, and you know that every time they say that, that means that it's a particular type of book and that's not the type of book you go for, then you can kind of filter.
Yeah.
But
like, I got to the end of this one and I was like, oh, we all liked this one. This was a good book. It was an incredibly well-written book too.
It was. Which is in stark contrast to a lot of the conversation we've had about a lot of our books.
It's true.
Me especially. I admit I've been very vocal about my qualms. But
what did you think of the ending? Since we're all over the place as usual, there's no point in waiting to talk about the ending until the end of the podcast.
I wanted to table flip.
I could just feel the dread as you're reading and they're like, oh, everything's happy and we're getting married, but the invasion is coming. And I'm like, this is gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad.
Yep.
And
no, I was like, there's not not a whole lot left.
How quickly did you realize it was Forrest, though?
I did not understand that that's who it was, but I figured out it wasn't him. It wasn't him. It was not Roman pretty early on.
So I knew it wasn't Roman pretty quickly. I wasn't sure who it was going to be. And then I kind of figured it was Forrest, or at the very least I wasn't surprised that it was Forrest by the time like he was dragging her through the field.
I was getting very mad at him though. I'm like, he's right there.
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't quite understand. I was like, he's actually right there. You could just grab him. But then when they started to like camp and Forrest actually was explaining his, I don't know, like bond or something, tie to the god, I was like, okay, I can start to understand why he did not have the ability to take Roman and didn't have the supplies for it either.
I sort of wonder if that's what we're going to find is the situation with Roman. I wonder if there's some aspect of him reviving that makes that bond impossible to break kind of thing.
Well, it does say in the description of the next book, which I didn't read a whole lot, that Roman doesn't remember everything. So I think we're going to have a whole like amnesia storyline.
Oh, that's going to make me sad.
I know.
What I'm wondering, so it seems like what is the, I don't want to say bad god because that's not proven yet.
Dacre is the one that's
Dacre
kidnapped our
Roman.
boy Roman.
Yeah.
And did also to Forrest.
Uh-huh.
I am wondering if they're going to both end up being shits, which we've all established that we think they're both going to end up being shits. But I think maybe he has a little bit of the like hypnotism with being able to heal them and bring them back, and then being a little bit in control.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Forrest broke that control, but I think he can. I think she does as well. And I think it's with the music, because Forrest just instantly was like, I'm going to war, because he heard her music.
Yeah, that they say that happens to a number of people, that if they hear her music, they just feel so compelled to go defend or fight for her.
I mean, we don't have confirmation of that yet because we really don't know the perspective of the gods.
Yeah.
But it feels like they're using humans as chess pieces.
Which, I mean, gods probably would.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot in Greek mythology, too.
That's definitely the vibe I get when we get Dacre's
Mm-hmm.
perspective at the end, is that he is just picking people that he thinks are going to either amuse him or be the best soldiers for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sort of had that feeling of Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean feeling, where it's he goes up to him and he says, "Do you fear death?" And then sometimes stabs them and sometimes lets them live. Right? Like it's it's completely disorganized chaos. There is no rhyme or reason, just so long as it occasionally serves his purposes.
Yeah.
Is what it kind of feels like.
And Roman was really fighting to get to Iris, even though she was long gone at that point.
Well, it's got to be extra scary from Roman's perspective. He doesn't know what Forrest looks like.
Well, and Forrest had a mask on, so he has no idea who just took his wife.
For all he knows, it's just some crazed guy that's been stealing shit from people that decided he took a liking to Iris.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it makes sense that he would fight that hard to get to her, because it's not even just about him wanting to stick with her. It's that to him is a threat.
He doesn't know who just has the person that he loves.
Right. And she's blindly following him, thinking that it's Roman.
Right.
You know, she could have been led right off a cliff there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that has to terrify him too, because I'm sure he saw that, realizing she thought it was him, and feels a little guilt too, in that he thinks it's, I got her. She would so blindly follow me that she doesn't realize that it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure her brother and Roman have fairly similar builds and everything, even though it said the suit was ill-fitting. Now that she really took a look at it, but she was also, having the effects of the gas and everything when he first starts pulling her away.
And then he throws the gas mask on her, which completely distorts her vision.
Mm-hmm.
And the just disorientation of everything that's happening.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there was noise and explosions and all sorts of shit everywhere. People are bloody and suffocating around you.
Well, and you could put a mask on somebody that you care about, and there's, even if you don't really know that it's them, people talk all the time about having enough of a connection with somebody that you just like inherently trust that person, right? And so I'm sure that there's also this element of familiarity, even if if it's not particularly tangible.
Well, are you talking about the fact that Iris trusted this unknown person thinking it was Roman, but that familiarity was misplaced because it was Forrest?
No, I'm saying that they're probably, even if she didn't have even though it wasn't Roman, that there was probably a familiarity there that fit into that slot enough.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Oh, Forrest. I feel bad for Forrest.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to get all sorts of information on Forrest in the next book.
I also really wanted her to just punch him in the face.
How conflicting is that? Like, how conflicting can that emotion be? To be missing your family, to be trying to chase down your brother after not seeing him for 6 months, to literally follow him to war, and then to finally have him and have that emotion completely overshadowed by the fact that he took you away from your husband and the person that out of everybody you just saw, you were trying to stay close to.
Absolutely. Well, and then there's the other thing is that they had a plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She keeps with Roman, her friends keep together and grab each other, and they all meet at the lorry and go together. And so now she's also got the, I hope they didn't wait too long for us because they might have gotten caught if they didn't leave.
And the guilt of he was right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know what's happened to him. And all she knows is that she gave in and went with her brother.
I probably would have clawed his fucking eyes out. He's right there. That's ridiculous.
I guess it depends on how quick that fog was coming.
Yeah.
It might be that her brother was able to be more objective about it, and they maybe really couldn't go back for him.
And I understand that. I was just like,
well, if it ended happily, we wouldn't read the second book.
Also
no, I
that.
know. I actually kind of prefer books that sometimes don't end happily. The Hunger Games doesn't end super happily. I like when they have kind of a bittersweet ending because it's more reality. Even though, a lot of times you don't really want the reality in books, but sometimes I like it when it's a little more realistic.
Well, and especially for those of us who read romance a lot, usually everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the epilogue where they're happy, several months or years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's a nice break to have something that doesn't have everything all tied up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That there's some loose ends and not everybody gets the happily ever after, which I'm sure there will be in the second book. There better be. Iris and Roman better be happily ever after in the second book.
Well, I think that that's part of the appeal of books like Outlander and ACOTAR and their ilk of this extended storyline with usually a primary couple, is that there's enough hanging on the next book that you have this anticipation factor for it.
Right.
And I think YA does that just more.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily better, because I have seen adult romance books or just adult books that do this well. But I think YA leans into that more for a couple of reasons. One, I think because teenagers, if they're getting into reading, voracious as fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They just are. You know what I mean? And if you give them a hook for the next one, they will be there.
Yeah.
Right? Also, I think it allows them to have a shorter book. And at that age, a shorter book is easier to digest.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
So you can stop in what would be the middle of an adult novel.
Mm-hmm.
That is
I have a
true.
prediction for the next book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
Oh.
Forrest makes it.
Someone's got to die.
I
Yeah.
don't think Forrest makes it.
Someone's got to die, and it can't be Roman or Iris.
Nah.
I mean, it could be, but
I will
youths-
table flip if
the
it's
youths
Roman
would be
or
very
Iris.
upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will throw a big ol' hissy fit like a goddamn toddler.
You know who what we haven't talked about much is we haven't talked about our side characters.
And they're great ones in
They
this.
are great
Yeah.
ones.
We've talked about the families before they go to war.
True, but we haven't talked about the B&B owner, Marisol,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and Addie, the other war correspondent,
Mm-hmm.
And Marisol's wife, whose name is eluding me.
Keegan, I believe.
Yeah.
Keegan,
Keegan.
that is, yes.
And then even some of the characters that you only meet for a second, like Lieutenant Lark,
Mhm.
I got very teary-eyed when Lieutenant Lark died. I was
I
like,
would have killed for Lieutenant
yeah.
Lark.
Yeah, that one was rough.
I was bawling. That one hit me in the feelers real hard.
Yeah.
I just think that Lieutenant Lark's death is a really good example of not all deaths have to be this sudden, sharp thing. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, and then they got shot and died. It can be this slow, almost drawn out moment because she finds Lieutenant Lark as they get onto the last lorry away from the front. And it's very clear he has a gut wound and is probably not going to make it. And they have this conversation where they're exchanging stories. And then the ending line is something like Iris said she was holding his hand. And then 2 hours later, she was still holding his hand when he died.
Mhm.
And it was just beautiful and sad. And it got me in my heartstrings.
A lot of injuries are not fast deaths.
Yeah.
No.
And so I appreciated putting that in. Like most knife wounds, sword wounds, those kind of things, you're not going to bleed out in a minute. You're not going to start coughing up blood immediately. It's going to be slow.
Yeah.
Especially a belly wound, they're slow and agonizing.
Well, and she foreshadowed it with the gal that Iris helped into the infirmary earlier who had a gut wound and passed away.
And all she could do was make her comfortable, laid her on the floor and talk to her.
One of the things that I thought was really smart about the way that this was written in having them be war correspondents is that we're exposed to the war at the same pace that they are.
Yeah.
We're not coming into it already soldiers, because that's a more accessible point for the majority of people. And she did a very good job of making you feel what you should feel while not making that the point of her story, I thought.
Right.
I agree. There's so much about it that was so beautiful and so well written.
Well, that's the thing we haven't really talked about, is the language is sophisticated.
It is, which is hard to do. When you decide to write a book about writers, you have to live up to them being good writers.
Right.
And I really felt like they were, especially in the letters. And you could tell that the letters were written different than the actual prose of the book. They were more flowery. They had older language in it, it felt like, or older like styles of talking. And I thought that was just, well, it lived up to it. So I'm happy.
Well, there's just something that text messages can't do, you know? You can't have I'm half agony and half hope.
There's another line. I don't think she wrote it in a letter, but it just got me. And it was like, I don't want to wake up when I'm 74. I don't know why 74 specifically, but that was the number. I don't want to wake up when I'm 74 and realize I haven't lived. And I was like, me too.
Right?
Me too.
Don't be attacking us. We're twice your age.
Oh my God, his confession letter when he used the words that they gave him in the garden.
You sneaky son of a bitch.
He did it and I was like, you son of a bitch. Because he calls down in the garden being like, I need another word for, I can't remember what word it was.
Sublime.
And both her and Addie give him more words for sublime.
Transcendent and divine.
I
remember.
And she gave him shit because she's like, what happened to your thesaurus? It was always on your desk. And he's like, yeah, you always used to turn it around. I didn't bring it with me.
Yeah. Oh, he played it well. He played it well.
Oh my God, so well. That moment, I was hyperventilating a little bit when that happened.
I was definitely getting those heart flutters. I was like, oh, I wish a boy had been like this to me.
What about when she went to confront him with the letters?
I mean, I think it makes total sense.
I mean, she would be angry.
Yeah.
I would be angry. I'd be like, bitch, were you making fun of me? That would be my first instinct. And she does exactly that.
Yeah. Well, especially with the fact that the beginning of the book was them both making fun of each other all of the time.
Right. Well, and I think if it hadn't been that it had gone on this long, like if he had confessed earlier, if she'd found the letter that we don't get to find out about in totality until the end, that he did confess that it was him right before she leaves, which I figured that's what it was.
Yeah. Something along those lines.
Yeah. When we knew there was a letter she didn't read, that's what I figured it was. But if she had found out in that moment, I don't think they would have been able to develop the relationship they had. The reality is it had to play out that way because, okay, at this point, at the point that he confesses that it's him, all she knows is that they kind of have good tension and that there's this little something about him that she finds pleasing and he's getting married to someone else.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that him going and becoming a war correspondent and showing up the same place she is, it gives her the opportunity to actually find out that she enjoys him as a person without it just being the letters. Like they go running together and, they do shit together and she starts to enjoy him as a person. And then they go through this big thing with the war and everything in the trenches when they're supposed to be writing, and then shit goes down. And it gives them the opportunity to actually become solid friends and, solidly into each other on their own merit before realizing what actually was going on.
Well, and by the time she had left to go to war, she wasn't in love with quote unquote Carver yet. So she needed to fall in love with the letters. I mean, she liked him, but I don't think she
wasn't solid. She had feelers for him, but not enough that she was concerned about, because she was catching some feels for Roman before she left. Not a ton, but just enough.
Yeah.
And then she was having the moments of, I got to figure this out. But then shit went down. Her mother died. She didn't get the position and stuff. And she decided that she needed to go find the only thing that made sense to her in that moment, which is her brother. And so she put her priorities above a boy, which I love. Yeah. That does not happen in romance very often. And I'm very pleased that she was like, this shit's more important than the 2 boys that I might have possibly.
Well, I think too, when she went to go do that, and this is something I'm sure many Americans can relate to, is it doesn't hit the same way when it's happening over there. Right. So she, in her mind, yes, she's going to war. She's going to be this war correspondent, but it has not hit her what the reality of that is. And this is a town, at least, that is acting under the assumption it will never come to them.
Yes. And that's the whole reason that the paper is sending her there, is because they need to get the people in oath to realize that this is serious. It will be coming. You need to understand.
Right.
Definitely has feels of the U.S. during World War II. That's Europe's problem.
Right.
Until it's not.
It's not anymore. We sort of started this in trying to talk about the side characters, so I'm going to go back to them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah. So Marcella, I thought that she was a wonderful character. I want to know so much more about her life.
Yeah, everything.
How she got to be where she's at. Like the little snippets that she allows us to have. I'm like, give me more. I will read just that book. Thank you. I will just read.
Oh, for sure.
Marcella and Keegan, give me that. I will read the shit out of that. But I also like that she was balancing this attitude of being sort of a mother figure in the absence of one for many of these, really, in her perspective, kids.
Oh, they
and
are
ours.
Kids. Yeah. Because she's 33, is that what?
Something like that,
36? Like, she's our age.
Yeah.
And so, if some 18-year-old showed up in the middle of a war, I'd be like, okay, so you are my child now.
Right.
Temporarily, but you're my child.
You belong to me now. I protect.
Beyond that, she's also doing a really good job of helping them grow up, because she knows that the reality is they don't get to really be kids anymore. And so I just find her to be a fascinating character. I love the garden.
Oh, the garden's beautiful.
Yes. The idea of keeping this garden going, not because it's something you're passionate about, but because your partner is passionate about it. I love that. I want to know more about her.
Hopefully we'll get something, because I know...
Hopefully she's not dead, because then I'll lose my fucking shit.
Oh, I will lose my shit.
I would imagine that one of the first things Iris does once they get at least a little bit settled in Oath is to try to go to whatever town her sister's in.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but that was where the whole plan was, that they were going to go to the town that Marcella's sister is in, because Keegan wanted her to be safe. Keegan's in the war, though. Like, she's in charge of shit.
Yeah.
She's a captain.
She's a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would follow Keegan.
Oh, yeah.
She can tell me what to do, probably.
I was really scared for a little bit that Keegan was actually dead and Marcella was just...
I got that vibe, too. That she was just, like, not telling people.
Well, I didn't necessarily get that she wasn't telling people, but that she legitimately didn't know.
Oh.
Whether she was alive or dead. And so she's going to be alive until she's dead, you know?
I got the vibe that she was dead and she just didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. That's the impression I got, too, that maybe she was dead and she's just, like, pretending for her own bit of sanity, really. That, nope, she's just gone. She travels for work. Because that's the first thing she says is she travels for work. Not even that she's in the war.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which I do understand her perspective. Like, they have been sent on an assignment to give an unbiased account.
Mm-hmm.
If you're told you're living with somebody who's on one side and
Yeah.
has a partner who is fighting for one side, it's kind of difficult to be unbiased.
And I appreciate that she's not trying to put that on them either.
Right.
How about, what is her name? The friend?
Addie?
Addie. I always
Yes.
forget her name. I don't know why.
I think it's because she sometimes goes by a full name that I also can't.
Theodore, or Theodora is her full name, and her last name is like at something.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I imagine like Atwood or something. So that's why she goes by Addie.
That's half the time they go by their first name. Half the time they go, because it's Roman, but then it's also Kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which Kit is a sexier name.
Kit is a
For
sexier
sure.
name.
Yeah.
Is it his last name or is Roman his last name?
Kit is his last name.
Okay.
His
Roman
name is
Carver Kit.
Yes,
Yeah.
Roman Carver Kit.
I lost track for some reason on what his actual first name was
It's understandable. It's very interchangeable.
because she's yelling Kit at him, and I'm internally going, "That's your last name now too." Because I would imagine she will be changing her last name. It's a much more old-fashioned world.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
They have magical typewriters.
I mean, yeah.
Who knows what the fucking rules are? Here's the thing: old-fashioned world, but they have female generals,
yeah.
captains,
Yeah.
whatever position Keegan is in. They have no problem with a woman competing for the same job as a man.
Right.
So,
They didn't bat an eyelash at the fact that Keegan and Marcella are married.
right.
Also that.
So it's old fashioned in the technology, but I don't know that it's old fashioned in the society.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. Also, his fiance, quote unquote, was helping out in her father's lab.
Mm-hmm.
So she's
Yeah.
clearly a chemist of some sort, even though she was a musician.
She was a pianist.
She was
And
a
then
pianist.
when Enva came, they took all the music away.
Which is
essentially.
also our Addie story.
Yes.
Because Addie was a violinist to the
Mhm.
point where she wanted to be in the symphony like that. She
Mhm.
wanted that to be her life.
And she's got her secret basement violin
Yeah.
storyline, which I was also totally interested in that story.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, tell me everything,
Mhm.
Addie.
Yeah, she gave us characters and that were interesting enough that I wanted to know more about them, but did not steal the show, did not take
Yeah,
away from our
right.
ability to have this romance between these two. And I thought that was really great.
It's very tricky to do, to create characters that are super interesting and I care about, but that do not overshine the main characters.
Mhm, mhm.
And I really like how they became kind of a found family. Everybody in the
Yes.
B&B, that's their family. That's, they melded into each other's lives in a very important way. They had their things that they did every day and everything. They went to the ward and everything to help take care of the injured soldiers. But then Iris and Roman go running every day, and Addie has her own things and everything. And I like that they melded into each other's lives, and that's
Yeah.
very difficult to do.
Well, Addie, I think, was the perfect mix of big sister and best friend
Yes.
Mhm.
because she had some of the big sister tropes or themes, but not so much that she was like the eldest Bennett sister.
Jane.
Yeah. And she was still the best friend throughout it and the confidant of Iris. So
Mhm.
she was a good character.
She was.
She was a good character.
They were all good characters.
Yeah.
Also, like, I love a bitch who will scoop up a cat when she has an opportunity.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, fuck
You
yeah.
know?
I felt that one. I was like, this is the moment where I truly connect with this book, is grabbing the random cat.
Yeah.
the moment with the cat that connected me to it was, so Roman got hurt on the front lines,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
injured his leg real bad. He had been sewed up and everything. They went for a walk and he popped a stitch.
Mm-hmm.
She went to go get their neighbor, I think it is, from the B&B, who has a truck. It's called a lorry. It's a very English term, to go pick him up and bring him back so that he didn't have to walk back. And when she gets back, the cat is sitting in Roman's lap because he can't move and he's fucking allergic to it. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is a very cat thing to do.
For sure. They seem to find those people. They're like,
Yeah.
this will kill you. Rub, rub, rub.
The one thing I was terrified about, though, and we'll never know the ending of, I'm sure, is right before the invasion, Addie was like, let me put the cat somewhere safe. And she puts him in the basement. And I'm like, that cat is still in the basement.
Yeah, I know. I thought of that too. I'm like, oh no.
What happened to the cat?
I was at peace before this, Liz.
Where did the cat go?
I am envisioning
This is
people
another
went
Hedwig
through
moment.
the town and opened all the doors.
Fuck.
Yeah. I'm just envisioning that, yeah, when the soldiers go and raid everybody's houses, they open the basement door and the cat just runs out.
Yes.
And the cat's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or the cat's like, okay, you're my new friend.
If the cat was in the basement, it might have been protected from the gas.
Yeah, no, the gas didn't get to the cat. That's officially decided.
The cat is fine.
Yep.
Out living its best life, just waiting to get scooped up by someone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
It used one of its 9 lives, but it's otherwise fine.
I'm over here all teary-eyed about a cat.
I was doing really well, and you had to fuck up my day. So thanks for that. But I'm going to transition us away from the cat, so that doesn't become our next podcast, the cat podcast. I think we need to talk about their wedding and therefore.
The sexy time.
And their wedding night.
Yes. One, it was very sweet because Iris has this idea in her head that it's not going to happen now because we don't have time. There's an emergency. And her little community that she's built all band together to give her this as lovely as can be possible.
Well, and their thing is if the world is going awful around you, you need to make time for the things that are important to you.
Right. And I thought it was really well done. And I thought it was just so sweet. It was, obviously it was a little bit more pressure for it to be sweet and nice because it's their wedding night, yada, yada, yada. But like, as far as like, how many books have we read where the gal's a virgin and it's just a disaster? And they're like, but she came like 3 times, right? Ugh, which is gross. Anyway, I mean, good for her, but also not real.
Yeah.
But this book did a really good job of not shying away from the first time being awkward.
Yeah.
They're both having their first time.
Which I liked. I liked that a lot.
I liked that they both are virgins in it.
And then they're fumbling around in the dark. It was very cute.
Yeah, because they had a blackout order. So like they walked in and there was candles everywhere and then they like started undressing and then they got interrupted because they had to be like, Keegan says there's a blackout order.
Uh-huh.
So then they had to blow out all the candles.
So the thing that I liked about that, the blackout order, and then just the entire scene in general, is if we remember, this is an 18 and a 19-year-old, and it took a sex scene and didn't overly sexualize it.
Yes.
And
correct.
Normally, I'm not a fade to black person, and this technically isn't fade to black, but I didn't want to hear the sexy bits.
Yeah, no,
about
I
this
didn't
one.
want, not about this one.
If it had crossed that line, then I would be having a very different opinion about the whole book, if we're being completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because no, much like other aspects of the book, it almost had a poetry to it.
Yeah.
Which was very nice. And it didn't make it this graphic thing. It was, as much as it grosses me out to say it, it was making love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, I don't know what
though.
I don't know what it is. You put make and love right next to each other. I'm instantly like, ugh, don't say that.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, but I agree though. It was very much them. Well, and they're experiencing each other for the first time and they can't see each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which
so
I liked.
I
I
did
liked
really
it.
like that.
Yeah, I did really like that. Well, it takes the pressure off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it also allows it to still be kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
You haven't had all of your firsts in one day,
Mhm.
right?
I kind of got a little giggle in the morning because they like have to get up and get ready to go and everything. And so the first time that they actually see each other naked is in the morning after.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he like looks her up and down a little bit and she's like, no, we don't have time. I was like, yeah. That just made me laugh. It's a very typical like, no, just another time.
Mhm.
Going back to the actual wedding itself, I loved that it wasn't perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
The rings didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
They still had to wear their jumpsuits. They had a bunch of random people in the house. So it was like a party, but they didn't really know each other, which felt very kind of like Last Night on
Wartime-esque,
Earth.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
And they put flowers in her hair.
And they put flowers in her hair.
It
was
was very cute.
They made do with what they had, which is a very wartime thing as well.
Yeah.
Yes. There are many stories that are in this vein, but there was a tendency to make clothing out of flour sacks during the war.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so when the flour manufacturers realized that that's what was happening, they started putting really cute prints on them. And so there were people who were married in flour sack dresses.
Well, I think that is kind of the nicest and sweetest way we can end a book that has a lot of tragedy in it.
Mhm.
Agreed.
So we're going to end that and go right into our ratings. Since we were talking about spice, what is your spice rating?
I mean, it's like a 2. It is there, but not gross. And I mean, I usually like the real heavy spice. We know this, but I did not want that.
No.
in this
It
book
wouldn't be
at all.
appropriate.
It
No.
would not be appropriate. But I think it's like a 2. It is there, but not.
I was like a 1.5. I can definitely see a 2. So
Mhm.
I'm going to stick with 1.5.
I'm also going to go with 1.5, but I think that it was good. What
Yes.
was there? I want to be really clear. Sometimes when we give these lower ratings, it's because we think that what existed was bad.
That is not the case.
This,
no,
that is
it
not
just
the case.
isn't
We're just saying that
spicy.
there wasn't a lot of it in there, and we like that.
Yeah, we very much did on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, romance.
Romance.
I actually kind of give their romance a 4. I digged it.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
was
digged their romance hard.
I was going to say a 4.5. The only thing that stopped it from being a 5 is there were just a couple of moments that I wanted a bit more. Like I wanted a bit more between when she confronted him about the letters and when she forgave him.
Fair enough.
I think contextualizing it as a YA novel, this was for me a 4.5. Like this was very, very well done. And I don't want it to be more. I don't want them to be pretending to be adults who've searched the world for each other. They're
Right.
teenagers who've found each other as teenagers, and it's an appropriate amount of romance, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. What's your overall then?
It was a 4.5 for me.
Ooh, that's a high rating for Danny.
I know. I really liked it. It was beautifully written. And I pretty much liked every character. Even the ones that are like, you're supposed to be like, that son of a bitch. I'm like, I like you though. I like the character, not
Right.
as a person.
Right. You like
You
the
fulfilled your role.
yes.
Yes.
Wiggles?
I give it a 4. It's not short of a 4.5 or a 5 or anything like that. It's just not the genre I lean into it very more anymore. So the fact that it's getting a 4 for me is like it getting a 5 because
It's high praise.
yeah, I don't really do a YA very often.
Right. The thing is it didn't feel like a YA. I mean, yes, some of the
Yes.
plot did, but it didn't hit me over the head with it.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
I am giving it a 4.5 as well. I almost considered giving it a 5.
I thought about it as well.
honestly, and I'm still kind of teetering between 4.5 and 5. The big kind of things that tell me it's going to get a higher rating should be if I know I want to immediately read the next book, which I do,
Yep.
and I can't. So a part of me wants to actually reread this book.
Dang.
This may become one of my, I listen to frequently novels.
It was a very
Yeah.
well produced
Was it?
audiobook.
Yes, it really was.
You talked me into it. I'll give it a 4.5.
4.5s all around.
Yeah.
A more difficult question. What are your recommendations?
So, my first book is if you want the grown-up, fully adult version of this book, Kristen Hanna has the book The Nightingale. It is much darker, and it is because it's based on real events in World War II. It's heart-wrenching. It's hard to get through, and it's beautiful. And her characters are always well developed, and she does an amazing job with this one. So if you are adult enough and if you are ready for a good long cry, The Nightingale. if you are looking for something a little bit more fun, but also has this foreboding sense of war not allowing the youth and fun and joy to continue, Howl's Moving Castle. Book or movie, your choice. Dealer's choice on that one. I will say I think that the book has a little bit something more to offer than the movie.
Sure.
Hayao Miyazaki is a fantastic film creator, but it's altered to be more tailored to children in the movie. And the book, while is still a children's story, it is not as childish, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are my recommendations.
Danny.
So mine would be, they would have to be mixed to make this really this one. But so Hunger Games, because obviously it's a YA novel, it's got the impending doom and everything. But I also want to mix it with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because of the portal aspect a bit and the magic aspect a bit.
And
also,
British
there's
aspect.
British aspect, and then there's also the there's war in that book as well. There's a lot of shit that goes down in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But so yeah, I just kind of feel like if you mixed those two and then added a little more romance, because Katniss is never down in the Hunger Games. She's just like, fine if I have to, make it a little more sweet. Then yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to hit us with the off the wall one, the random one. And that is The Paris Apartment by Kelly Bowen. And this is a modern, it's got two time periods. It's got modern and World War II. And a woman inherits her grandmother's apartment. And so when she goes and investigates what's in there, because she hasn't really ever been to this apartment, she finds all sorts of items from World War II that her grandmother had been storing away. And she has to go through this whole process with this artwork specifically, and this other lovely gentleman who is an art appraiser, to figure out where this art came from, who it belongs to, what's happening. And then we get the World War II time period of her grandmother actually helping the people in Paris as they're getting taken over by the Nazis.
Wow.
Oh.
It's an amazing book. I love it.
She was hiding art from the Nazis.
She was.
I want to read that book.
The Monuments Men story, right? Actually, that was primarily women who were running that. So that,
Really?
yeah. God damn historians just being like, women aren't real.
I
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, I think that's a really great story that now I want to go read.
Yeah, no, me too.
So I guess I kind of like just the idea of somebody in the future having to piece together the past, kind of
Yeah.
in the way that they're piecing their letters together, just reminded me.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, well, that's the end. So if you liked this episode, you can find us out there on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets on TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. Please leave us a comment, a like. Let us know what you think. We'd love to interact with you. Or at the very least, please, pretty please, if I can ask you so nicely, rate, review on whatever podcast app you're listening to. You can also find us out on our website at wrongdustjackets.com. We have our new blog that's out there, so you can enjoy other reviews about books that have not made it to a podcast episode. That's what we got. Thanks, folks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.